Well, good evening. I'm Bjorn Hansen, the Divisional Dean of the Tish Center, and I really appreciate this, our first time together as a large group for the academic year 2012-2013, to welcome you. To our returning students, welcome back. To our new students, welcome to NYU and the Tish Center. Sincerely, welcome. We're so glad that you're here. I also like to offer a special welcome. There's so many guests we have in the audience. I'd like to acknowledge them all. But we'll start with just one at this part of the program, and that is Dorothy Jennings. Dorothy, if you would stand. Dorothy is the Executive Vice President of HVS International. The Dean of the Tish Center is the HVS Chair. There are HVS scholarships. There's the HVS Computer Lab on 42nd Street, and we have a number of guest lecturers and adjunct faculties from HVS, so a wonderful supporter of the Tish Center. I mentioned scholarships just a moment ago. I want to talk just a little bit about scholarships today. We are very aware of the challenges in finding ways to finance your NYU education and just how expensive it is. And we've been somewhat successful over the last 2 years of increasing the amount of scholarship awards that we can have through the Tish Center. This year we'll award about 4 times the amounts in dollars that we did 2 years ago. We've also been somewhat successful in finding outside scholarship support, and you received an email from me in September that had the Tish Center Scholarship Guide. If you didn't open that email and you're interested in scholarships, there's a guide that has about 40 different industry scholarships that are available. So we've about tripled the number of dollars from those, and we're still working diligently to try to do that. So there'll never be enough, but we're doing everything we can to find more ways of supporting the cost of education. But we've had a tradition that was established by the founding dean, Layla Rack. Dean Rack is sitting in the back row over here. At this event, the Stephen W. Brener Distinguished Lecturer event, of awarding some of the scholarships. So I'd like to do that right now. We have so many wonderful sponsors of scholarships, but we'll keep the tradition of the ones that have been awarded at this event. So the first scholarship award is sponsored by the America's Lodging Investment Scholarship. It's part of the Alice Conference Foundation. And I'd like to invite Cindy Aeppel and Eric Delaney to please come to the stage. By the way, this is Cindy, and that's Eric. Good. If you would please open, and we'll take a picture. This way we can send it to the Alice group. Good. Thank you. Thank you. Good. The next scholarship is it's the Rama Scholarship for the American Dream. I know Mr. Rama. He is one of the great success stories. Arrived with very little money and nothing but ambition and talent and skill, and is now one of the largest owners, based on number of rooms, of hotels in the United States, specializing in select service-type hotels. And the recipient for that is Zara Azani. Zara? Thank you. Congratulations. And the third scholarship and last one award today is the Hyatt Hotel Scholarships for Minority Lodging Students. And our recipient for that is Sue. No. Sue, please come up. Good. Thank you. Congratulations. Now, I'm a true believer that the Tish Center is really a very, very special place. And it's special not just because it's part of NYU, but our students and our full-time faculty and our adjunct faculty and our alumni and our Friends of the Tish Center Advisory Board. We have so many wonderful gifts that I really think this makes this a very special place. Part of the specialness is complemented, though, by being in New York. And because we're in New York, we can have guest lectures and adjunct faculty and site visits and internships and case studies and research projects and capstone projects and so on. But it also enables us to have events like this one. And on the back of your program, we have a list of the events that happened during the course of the year at the Tish Center. And we've got the Brener Lecture, the Grossinger Lecture, Tish Lecture, Ramsey Lecture, Arthur Miller Panel, and then in June we have our NYU International Hospitality Investment Conference. So being in New York provides us access to wonderful resources and executives to have these kinds of programs. And if you're a new student, you'll get a sense that the people who participate as our special panelists and guest lecturers are the kinds of people you want autographs for. And our panelists today are going to stay around and will sign autographs if you'd like. So let me tell you a little bit about Stephen Brener. I was very fortunate to get to know Stephen Brener. Steve was with us until 1994. He died at the age of 68 years old. Dorothy Jennings worked with Steve for how many years? 20-something is the way to express it. Steve, a few reasons why we name a lecturer after him, and kind of in reverse order, but everything he did was so important and meaningful to this industry. There was the transactions business in lodging, kind of before Steve and after Steve. Before Steve really influenced the industry, brokers and transactions were really based on listings, and there were people who were good at listing and placing those listings, and buyers would find those listings, and the brokers really didn't serve much of a function as an advisor. What Steve did is, because he really was a genuine industry expert, he understood industry economics and strategy and branding, is he was really an advisor to his clients. And what he would do is identify opportunities kind of even before many of the lodging companies did. And he would go to lodging companies and say, there's a portfolio available, and it's not in your segment, your supply segment, but here's why I think it fits into your portfolio. And he really helped major lodging companies become the companies that they are today. He made a profession, enhanced the professional ethics of the transaction market, and again, was a true advisor to almost every major lodging company and real estate owner with hotels in the United States. That alone would be enough to name a lecture series after Steve. He was also truly committed to student education. And the first degree hospitality program courses taught at NYU were actually in what's now the Schacht Institute, the Real Estate Institute, but he wanted there to be hospitality courses taught at NYU. So he rounded up a bunch of industry colleagues, suggested that they propose to NYU that they have courses in the real estate program. And that really is how we started a hospitality program at NYU. I would say the Tish Center wouldn't exist if it were not for Stephen Brener. The third is he really was committed to industry education and professionalism. And he organized the first conference that has grown into what is the NYU International Hospitality Investment Conference that's held the first week in June every year in New York. And that's the major event for the lodging industry. Over 2,000 people will attend that event this June. It raises incredible resources, scholarships, and funding for the academic programs of the Tish Center. So between what he did in his profession, what he did for really creating what became the Tish Center of NYU, what he did for us, for the resources that come from the NYU International Hospitality Investment Conference, we owe so much to Steve, and that's why we have named this event after him. So let's get on with the program. Our moderator tonight is Professor Sharr Prohaska. Now, if you'll turn to page 3 of the program, there's a short bio of Professor Prohaska. But let me just tell you some things. So I asked her when we first started talking about our interest in teaching and working at the Tish Center, what her career has been. And she answered with what's in that bio. But she also answered something else, which was so good I wrote it down. She said, I am an activist, a preservationist, a lobbyist, a pragmatist, but most of all, I am a tourist. So she's someone who teaches but really loves the field of tourism. She developed what was the first cultural heritage course taught in North America that now has been replicated in tourism programs across the country and around the world. And she also created the Tish Center Scholars Program. That was her creation and one of her many gifts to the Tish Center. I could go on, but we're so privileged to have an extraordinary moderator for such an extraordinary panel. So please welcome to the podium Professor Sharr Prohaska. Thank you so much.
I can hardly wait for the day I get to introduce Bjorn Hansen. But anyway, thank you. So good evening, welcome. It's great to see all of you here tonight. The Brener Lecture, as you know, focuses on the hospitality business, but what you're going to hear tonight applies to all students, whether you're in tourism or sports management. I think you're going to learn a lot that goes across all your degrees. So let's get going. As Tish Center students, you probably expect the opportunities for you to succeed are limited, and you can just do anything you want to do in the future. And you know that if you master your homework and you do your hard work, that in a few years you hope you're going to be sitting in one of those seats at a corporate suite, right? And that you should achieve that upon graduation. And once you work, you should be able to get to the top. But it was only a little more than 20 years ago in the Wall Street Journal that there was an article that appeared, and it was called The Glass Ceiling: Why Women Can't Succeed and Break the Invisible Barrier That Blocks Them from Getting the Top Job. That term, glass ceiling, resonated with women around the world, and it expressed their frustration at that time of trying to move ahead in their careers. It was just very difficult. The great news is that those times have changed, and they keep changing every day for the better. So now we see many women are elected to become CEOs of different companies, and they are appointed to senior management positions in hospitality businesses, but also in Fortune 500 companies. So all good things are happening. Given the significant role that women contribute to the economy and to the hospitality business, it's imperative to promote equal opportunities, encourage entrepreneurship, help develop their leadership skills, and most of all, value their professional education, which all of you are working so hard to achieve. Tonight, we are fortunate to have 4 outstanding women, and we only have 4 because one couldn't make it tonight. She was coming in from Madison, Wisconsin, and unfortunately, the plane was held, and it was held because President Obama was there, so she couldn't get in the airspace to get here to see you, so she regrets she couldn't be here. So tonight we have 4. But these women that we have are fabulous, and they're very excited to share their expertise and how they became very successful leaders in the industry, role models, and how they were able to break some of these barriers to achieve what they have today. So I'm going to ask our guests questions for about 45 minutes, and then you will have about 10 minutes, 15 minutes to ask the questions that you want to know. And so it should be very interesting dialogue. So tonight it is my honor to introduce our guests. I will introduce them in alphabetical order, and so I would like, as each one comes on the stage, if you would please welcome them. So our first guest speaker is Glyn Aeppel, got it right, President and Chief Executive Officer. Oh, she lost her mic. Of Glencove Company. It is a hotel investment and advisory company with an emphasis on independent living styles. And she has been in this business for over 30 years, and with global experience in developing buildings and hotels, hotel brands, raising capital, asset management, and investing in hotel companies, all those things that you've studied. Some of these include the Marriott, the Interstate Hotels, La Meridienne, Fairmont Hotels and Resorts, and Loews Hotels. Most recently, Glyn served as Chief Investment Officer for Andre Balazs Properties. She has sourced, closed, and financed investments in over $2 billion throughout the United States and Europe. She holds an MBA from Harvard Business School and a BA from Principal College. Please welcome. There she already did. Thank you. Our next speaker is Brooke Denihan Barrett, and she is Co-Chief Executive Officer of Denihan Hospitality Group. Brooke helped lead the transformation of her family's 50-year-old business from a small collection of New York City apartment hotels to a growing leader in the more boutique hospitality industry. She is in her portfolio. It includes the James, the Affinia Hotels, the Surrey, and the Benjamin, and several other affiliates. Brooke brings a lifetime of hospitality management experience to Denihan's, a billion-dollar hospitality and investment management company. Since 2006, she has overseen more than $500 million in redevelopment projects in New York, Chicago, Washington, D.C., and Miami. And the much anticipated James Royal Palm is due to open in South Beach. So I hope we hear about that this month, correct?
Yes.
That's great. She was named Outstanding Woman in Real Estate by National Real Estate in 2011 and also received the prestigious Woman of Influence Award in Real Estate in both 2011 and 2012. So we welcome you again one more time. Thank you. Okay. Our next guest speaker is Ann Lloyd-Jones, and she's Managing Director of the New York office of HVS, the premier hospitality consulting firm. Since 1980, HVS has provided consulting services to over 20,000 hotels worldwide with 25 offices in 12 countries. Since joining HVS in 1982, Ann has provided consulting and appraisal services to over 5,000 hotels. She's responsible for the sale and supervision and administration of over 200 appraisal and consulting assignments annually. Her particular area of expertise include market studies, feasibility analysis, and appraisals. Sounds like one of your classes. Ann Lloyd-Jones received her Bachelor of Arts degree from Swarthmore College and a Master of Professional Studies from the School of Hotel Administration at Cornell University. Please welcome. Last but far from least is Karen Rubin, who's the Senior Vice President for Global Development Policy and Feasibility at Starwood Hotels and Resorts Worldwide. Karen joined Starwood Hotels and Resorts in 2000. She's now Senior Vice President of Global Development, Development Policy, and Feasibility. In this position, she manages the creation and implementation of deal policy globally. Karen's also responsible for managing the Global Development Committee, underwriting new deals that include acquisitions, joint ventures, management contracts, mezzanine loans, franchises, and all new development for Starwood Hotels. That's a big responsibility. Prior to joining Starwood, Karen spent over 18 years at HVS International, where she was promoted to Senior Vice President. She graduated with distinction from Cornell University Hotel School of Administration. Please welcome, and you're welcome. Here we go. Let's go. Okay. So here we go. Are you ready? Are you ready? All right. So we have some questions, and the ones I'm going to ask, I'm ready to go. Is it okay? I see the mic man's. Yeah, that's okay. Okay. So here we go, and we'll go down the road the first time, and then after that it's going to be more interactive. So would you please share with everyone here tonight your background in hospitality and your career path? How did you move beyond the barriers to succeed in the positions you hold today?
Good evening, everybody. I just want to say it's such a pleasure to see all these young faces actually coming here to listen to us all speak. So I hope that it's worth it. I know it's required attendance, but hopefully it's worth it. I'd like to tell you a little bit about my background, which is probably a little bit different because there's a family aspect to it. My family's been involved in the hospitality business for almost 50 years. And actually, our very first hotel was built on the site of my father's dry cleaning and laundry business that he ran for many years with his father. And don't think that being in the family entitles you to any kind of position, because we all were expected to work harder and longer hours than anybody else. And actually, for a good many years, of all of the family members that I work with, I was the only woman. So if we had a longer time on the panel, I could certainly share some stories with you. But my background, my very first paying job, I should say, was as a bookkeeper. And it was actually counting the cash and walking the cash to the bank and knowing what a debit and credit is. And that was, I hate to date myself, but it was before computers. And today they use armored cars when you go to when you need to take a deposit to the bank. But that was my very first job in the hotel. And from there, I worked my way up to various positions throughout the hotel business, at the front desk, in reservations, housekeeping, to gradually hotel manager. And probably one of the things that I really learned from all of those jobs was how you should treat people, and treating them the way you want to be treated. And that might sound like a very basic tenet, and it is, but it's very, very important as you think about your roles and careers moving forward. I gradually then segued into our corporate office and focused in many different aspects of hotel and hospitality, human resources, finance, marketing, technology. And so all of them, I really took away another skill set as I progressed up this career ladder. And at that point, I had worked with 5 other family members, and we probably spent a good amount of our time working at getting along. But back in 2005, this was when the market was really doing very, very well. And of the all of us, there was 4 of us that decided it was time to sell and harvest returns, and 2 of us, my brother and I, who decided that it was time to buy. And so we recapitalized the company, and we took on an awful lot of debt. We had to sell some of our assets, but we were able to buy 6 of the assets. And it was at that point that I decided that if I was going to have as much at risk as my brother, that I wanted an equal voice in the company. And so we decided to share the role of co-CEO. Now, he and I have worked together for, again, about 35 years, and I think sometimes we finish each other's sentences. And we do share the same values, and it works. I can't really say that a shared CEO role would work for every organization, but it works in ours. And so that's sort of like my background and how I got to where I am today.
Thank you very much. Glyn, do you want to
Yes.
see if it works?
I'll try again. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm thrilled to. My daughter actually was a freshman here a couple of years ago, and so it's lovely to see all these young and vibrant faces. I actually, from a career perspective, I think one thing to bear in mind is a lot of people try to plan out their careers, and sort of, sitting as a student today, you sort of have these plans of sort of where you want to go and how you want to get there. Maybe you don't, but in most cases, many people think they should have a plan. The first bit of advice is I had no plan. I think sometimes by planning too much, you will either disappoint or sort of question your steps. It is a balance between knowing where you want to go and how to get there. And I think there's an amount of fluidity that's just as important as there is sort of planning. So that's sort of my first advice. I had no clue or no interest at all in going in hospitality. I was sitting at business school, and one of my professors happens to have been on the board of Marriott. And I loved international finance. And he said to me, Glyn, if you love international finance, there's an amazing group at Marriott that are doing amazing sort of transactions, financial transactions in the Treasury Department. So why don't you go and check out Marriott and see what you think. So I was thinking, finance, global, exciting, So off I went, and I was very fortunate, and I had this meeting arranged with Bill Marriott. And at the time, he was still a big shot. Yeah. And there was little Glyn sort of walking in. And actually, he gave me some advice that I think hopefully will help you too. He said, if you're looking at the hospitality business, which he did not know I had no interest in, but if you're looking at the hospitality business, there are 2 career paths. One is a career path in operations, and one is a corporate career path. And you need to really understand the differences, because A, it's lifestyle, and B, it'll get down to sort of your enjoyment and your fulfillment in the job. And in the hospitality, that is very, very relevant, because the lifestyle in operations means you live in lots of different places, you move a lot, you work your way up the hotels, but you actually, if you're in a good company, they move you around a lot. So you have a very different lifestyle versus a corporate position where you're actually, sitting in a corporate support function, supporting really the operations of the hotels. So, and at the corporate function, you may move a little bit, but generally you're in a corporate environment, sort of pretty much in their corporate headquarters. And as women in careers, whether one likes it or not, if you are choosing to have a family at some point, you need to be very clear about this career path, because I know there are a lot of friends of mine that have gone in operations and have actually had very, very successful career plans, but they've juggled very, very hard, juggling their family, moving from location to location. So it is a reality, and it's something that you need to think about and make sure that as you address that, you know, it sort of reflects on you. For me, it was a corporate position I wanted. I was looking at finance, so that was clearly not an issue for me. And some of the sort of skills that I think have carried me professionally is I'm very, very determined in what I've wanted to accomplish. And actually, the quid pro quo was that I've actually moved a lot of companies. If you look at my resume, people go, oh my goodness me, you've gone to all these companies. But the reason I did that was because if I felt I couldn't get or achieve what I wanted in a company, I would move on. And you know, I think you have to really get a sense once you're in the industry of where your passion lies and what you want to accomplish. And if you can't get it within the company and you tell them and they don't respond, then I used to just pick up and leave. So I ended up, you know, climbing up the ladder, but not within a company, but within multiple companies. And there's different ways of getting there. So it's important to know yourself, and I think the determination, if you want to climb up a corporate ladder, nobody's going to offer you anything. There's no gold platter. There's nobody looking out for you. At the end of the day, you have to look out for yourself, and you have to do what's necessary to get there. The other issues is I think it's very, very important to be very detail-oriented in our business. It's a very, very complicated business, and being detail-oriented carries you a long way, and that's one skill that I focused on very early on. The other thing to be aware of that I think was a success factor for me is understanding the importance of mentors. When I came, you know, they had all these business school classes about mentorship and all, and I thought, you know, if I'm good, I'll be fine. Actually, I only learned later on in my career how important mentors are. And mentors aren't just people that sort of you suck up to. They're actually people that you click with. There are people that you end up in a work environment and you just connect with certain people. And it's up to you to nurture the relationship, because executives are busy. And I think sophisticated executives, particularly in the hospitality business that is very labor-oriented, are responsive to trying to mentor good and strong people. So if you're good and strong and you're performing and doing well, you need to nurture the relationships of executives that you just click with, you connect with. And you have to work that. It doesn't just happen. And I think that's also very important. That will carry you a long way in your career. So those are sort of some of the lessons that I've learned, and I think skills that have sort of helped me climb the ladder.
That's wonderful. It's great, and I want to hear more about this circuitous route. Very interesting. Right, we'll get to that later. Anne, Lloyd-Jones.
I guess I should start with a confession, which is that I didn't always want to be a hotel appraiser and consultant.
It's okay.
I didn't even know it was an
We
option.
won't hold it against you.
Quite honestly, actually, I'm not sure it was an option at the point in time when I was thinking, what could I do when I grow up? I wanted to be a teacher and have 6 kids in a really big house. That was my vision. So now you have a rough idea what generation I'm from. My career path started when I was in undergraduate school. I had a catering company, which actually grew out of babysitting jobs. My roommate and I babysat for the woman whose husband was the provost, and when he became provost, she all of a sudden had to entertain, and so she would hire us to come serve food and take care of the kids, and then she sort of realized that we could actually cook the food and serve it and take care of the kids, and it sort of grew out of that we had a catering company, and we were very fortunate to be supported by the food service on the campus, because we were no threat to them, and we were actually people who would happily do wine and cheese at the history department for 30 people, whereas the food service had bigger fish to fry, sometimes quite literally. So I did that, and I graduated, and had thought I wanted to be a teacher, but when you graduate from college in 1979, demographically speaking, that's not really a very viable option. So I stayed for a year, and I worked in the management of the food service, because what had actually happened in the catering company is we had started out doing wine and cheese for the history department with 30, but we'd ended up catering the board of managers dinners and the president's receptions and a bunch of other things, because we were willing to do stuff that was a little bit more creative than your basic food service. So they hired me, sort of brought all the business back in, and there I was. And the guy, my first mentor, in fact, who ran the food service said, if this is what you want to do, you need to go get educated. Because I had a degree in art history, which makes me, I don't know, I write well, I guess. And I know all the names for all the colors, right? Anyway, so he said, you need to go to graduate school. And I said, okay. And I started getting busy applying to Columbia and NYU and all this stuff. And he said, no, you need to go to hotel school. And so just because he told me I should look at it, I looked at it. And lo and behold, I ended up there, thinking that I was going to get the credentials that would let me establish a business and borrow the money and have the standing to launch my career as a caterer. And it took me about 2 weeks at Cornell to realize that when you have a catering company on a college campus, you have a captive audience and you have summers and weekends off. In the real world, the only time there's business for caterers is summers and weekends. There's no such thing as a captive audience, and the holidays are not your own. Well, I didn't like that. And about the same time that I was putting this all together, someone started talking about consulting, and I realized there are people who will pay me to be opinionated. And I am already opinionated, so that's got to be what I'm going to do. So I took the classes that sort of would steer me in that direction, and I was very fortunate to be recommended to Steve Rushmore. I had the distinction of being the first person he ever interviewed at Cornell and hired. And I have the other distinction of probably being the only person in the entire hospitality industry who's had the same job with the same company for 30 years. That's pretty weird. I'm not, maybe Glyn and I are at the opposite ends of the spectrum here, but it's pretty weird. And when I think about that, I often say I'm either in a terrible rut and somebody needs to do something to get me out of it, or I was incredibly lucky to find the strangely shaped hole that the strangely shaped me fit in really, really well. And I truly believe that it's the second part of that. But the other thing that I think has made it such a satisfying 30 years is that there's always something new. I mean, we do the same thing fundamentally over and over again, but it's always with different people in different circumstances. And I tell the people who work for me, every day I learn something new. And sometimes, like in the last 3 months, I learned about resting your linens. I had no idea. Right? I never worked in a hotel. I had no idea that after you washed the linens and you dried them, then you needed to let them sit for a day before you put them on the beds because they would wrinkle strangely. No idea. But I learned that 3 months ago, after 30 years. And it's not necessarily something as prosaic as that, but there's always something, if you are open to the experiences, and if you really listen to what's happening and look at what's happening around you, you will be rewarded from an intellectual curiosity perspective, but you will also learn things that you can use as building blocks to do a better and better job and be a better and better professional. And so I think if I was to identify one skill, besides stick-to-itiveness or rutness or whatever, it's really to be open to the things that are all around you, because in all of those you will find interesting things to make you laugh, maybe things to make you cry, which sometimes is a good thing, and things to help you grow intellectually and professionally.
Wonderful. Thank you. Karen, you ready?
Okay, is my mic working?
I think you're okay.
All right. So 30 years ago, I was a college dropout, and I was living in Greenwich Village.
Right here.
And I was supporting myself the only way that I could figure out to do so, by being a waitress. And I happened to be a waitress in kind of the then hot Manhattan nightclub scene, and it was glamorous, and it was fun, and the hours were great. You could sleep till noon. You did sleep till noon. You had to sleep till noon because you worked till 4 or 5 in the morning, or 6. But I knew that I was going nowhere, right? I was walking down the street one day and saw the back of a woman at a chain restaurant that used to exist then called La Crepe. And they used to make the waitresses wear these bizarre outfits. She was in this big dirndl skirt, all starched out, with a big starched hat on her head, and her back was to me as she was setting the table. She turned around just as I walked past, and she was this like 90-year-old shriveled woman. And I thought, oh my God, Karen, that's going to be you. So I had heard about, in the meantime, by the way, my background was I grew up in a family that didn't really talk about money, right? So I didn't really have a conception of how to go out and make it. And it was a real learning experience for me when I was being a waitress, when it occurred to me one day that, gee, you don't get promoted to be the owner of a restaurant. So let me just take a moment to say you guys are so far ahead of where I was. I am in absolute awe of you because you have all obviously made the decision already that it took me a couple of years of floundering around and living on tips to make, which was that I needed to get my tush back to school. And I applied to one school. I think if NYU had had a hotel program at that time, it might have been two. I applied to hotel school. My idea was that I would get credibility and then people would invest in me and then I could own a restaurant. Thank goodness they took me because I'd probably still be waiting tables if they hadn't. And that was the start of my career. Once I, of course, went to school, and I'm sure many of you are experiencing this now, I started to find that I had skills that I didn't know about. I could actually add and subtract and do math. And I also found out about different careers and different things that people could do in the industry that were interesting to me. So my career goals changed. And I decided I wanted to be a consultant, right? I wasn't quite sure what that was, but it sounded really good. And it really seemed to be kind of the top of the heap of what people did. So that was my ambition. There were two major consulting firms in those days, and neither of them wanted me. But I went and had dinner with Steve Rushmore. He had a little startup consulting firm, and he wanted me. So I ended up spending the next 18 years at HVS and had a wonderful experience there and know Anne very well from working with her there. I then decided that I wanted to make a change in my career and was very pleased at that time at how many options I had. For any of you who are uncertain, right, what you might like to go into, doing something in a company that allows you to meet other companies, right, and work with other companies is an interesting choice because it gave you exposure. So after 18 years, I had actually targeted a company called Starwood. I had introduced myself to them and was very gratified when they called me 2 or 3 years later and said, gee, we didn't know what to do with you when we met you, but we know what to do with you now. And I started there. I think my kind of observation is this. There's a lot of ways to grow a career, and Glyn, I completely agree with you that you plan and you're taught to plan, but it's very hard to plan. You really need to be open to opportunity. In my case, I don't know how many of you remember, probably from high school, because I doubt that you've had it in college, geology, right? Remember that there's this stuff called, this kind of rock called a sedimentary rock, right? And what happens is, like, you start as a little pebble, right? And you're in the river. And the river rushes by, and it's carrying debris and minerals and sticks and organic material, and a little bit of it sticks, right? And then years go by, and a little bit more sticks and sticks and sticks. And eventually, you get a big rock. So that's how I kind of view my career development, right? I worked and worked and worked to gain subject matter expertise, right? To become really, really expert at something and really, really good at something that interested me. And little by little, I accumulated the knowledge, right, and the experience and the contacts, right, and the poise or the je ne sais quoi, and kind of came out, and now I'm a big rock.
That's great.
Big rock.
Amazing stories. Great. Thank you.
She's actually much larger than she was when she started at HVS. She was only 4 feet tall at that point.
Thanks, Anne.
So how about sharing with the students here your responsibilities, how they've changed in the last 5 years, perhaps? What you're doing now, how things have changed in your careers? Can you do that? Anybody want to jump in, or do you want me to call on you?
Call on us.
Oh, Glyn.
Actually, I've gone through a massive change recently. I've been in a corporate environment for my 28, 30 years in the job market, really working for big corporations, and ended up, my last position was sort of a semi-entrepreneurial company with Andre Balazs, sort of building the New York Standard and developing hotels with him. And actually, I decided at that point, I've always had an entrepreneurial passion, and actually going to business schools, to be honest, really quelched that, because I was taught all the risks in the world and what not to do, and was petrified when I entered the world, the real world, in terms of what sort of the entrepreneurial spirit sort of was diminished. And so now I'm actually started my own company 2.5 years ago, and really building up an investment, a little bit of advisory work, but fundamentally a hotel investment company, building and buying hotels. And so I'm actually very different perspective. But sort of translating those two careers, one thing, sort of looking at where you're sitting today, is I'm on a board with Steve Case, who's the former AOL co-founder of AOL. And as you know, Steve Case is very active in the entrepreneurial world. And he has a very important perspective, which I think is very relevant, which is being an entrepreneur is very much like an attacker. You're out there in the front, you're fighting the battles, you're basically pushing the envelope of new concepts, new businesses, versus being in a corporate office or Fortune 500 companies. You're really a defender, because you're working within an organization, you're defending the values of a company, And I think when you look at your careers, the world is very different now. There are so many entrepreneurial opportunities. When I was young, it was, you didn't have the experience or the maturity to start a company. You thought you first had to work for 10 or 15 years. Today, it's very different. In fact, the younger you are, the more opportunities entrepreneurially you have. So I think, if I was sitting in your chair today, I would think very hard about your personality, whether you're more an attacker, whether you like the insecurity and sort of pounding the road and breaking barriers, to being a defender, where you're more in a corporate environment, a safer environment, and a very different career paths. And I've gone from being a defender to now being an attacker, and it's a very different world. And I think, sort of reflecting on my career, I think that's something you should sort of think through as you evaluate your career options.
Thank you. Brooke, how about sharing some of your responsibilities? I can't even imagine how many there are.
Well, I mean, I guess I'm thinking about how my job has changed over these past few years. As I said before, I mean, back in 2005 is when my brother and I bought the company and recapitalized. And maybe to put it in a nutshell, what I do today and what I did 5 or 6 years ago was I'm spending more time working on the business versus working in the business. I happen to love the operations, the people side of this hospitality business. You hear so many people talk about the numbers, the bottom line, but really where it's at is in the people side. And so for me, that was a very difficult segue to get away from being hands-on, detail-driven within the company. But it's actually was very needed, because the fact that we had so much at risk in our company, it was really important that my brother and I focused on growing the company and really targeting new areas for growth. And I have to say, looking back on it, we started out with 6 assets, and we currently have 14 that we own or manage. So I know we're making good progress. The other part of the equation, though, that I'm spending a lot more time in, and is just so critical, is on our culture. And I look at what really makes our company, have a competitive advantage, or really what makes our company what it is the people that work in it. And I think the most difficult thing is, as you grow, trying to replicate a culture that you have locally in other cities when you can't be there all the time. We have email, we have Skype, we've got all these electronic ways of communication, but really how you stay in touch with your people, how you coach and mentor, how you make sure that the decisions that are made in the same light that you would do. And so we have really made a lot of mistakes, and we've learned from our mistakes over the years. I really, our first venture outside of New York was to a hotel in Chicago. And we learned that you can't really operate a hotel remotely. You can't be arrogant enough to think that what you have here in New York is going to translate perfectly to another city if you're not there all the time. So I really think that we've learned from that. We now, as we're growing, we're taking people who are in our existing hotels, the ones that we feel really embody our culture, and making sure that they are the leaders of what the venture that we want to be successful as we grow. So in a nutshell, that's how my career has changed.
And are the people in your hotels that are the leaders, are those the ones that then you're trying to move into the other hotels in the
Yes.
new places so
Yeah.
that the culture still goes with them?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, Anne, how about you?
Well, I already confessed to having the same job for 30 years and kind of being in a rut, so
Well,
within
just
the-
tell them what you do as part of that rut.
within the last 5 years, I was promoted to managing director as Steve stepped back more and more from the business. I stepped in, and that's very rewarding. It's sort of on top of the things that I was already doing, so it's kind of time consuming too, and I have great support with Dorothy and a few other people. But I think the thing that I want to mention is that probably the most rewarding thing that's happened to me in the last few years has been finding opportunities to take the expertise that I have developed as a business person, not necessarily as a hotel consultant, but as a business person, and apply those skills to in a volunteer way. Because you develop all of these skills and abilities, and then you get to the end of the day, which I'm not at the end of the day yet, but you can see the end of the day in the future, or you hope you can, and you think, how can I make this be more worthwhile than in the bucket where I live every day? And so I was on the board of the undergraduate school that I went to for 5 years, and I now serve on the board of the Pelham Public Library, grand total budget of $600,000, but I do the budget. They didn't have anybody that understood budgeting and budget presentation, and I do that for them, and it's pretty easy for me. I like books and I like numbers, and so you can put that together. But it's incredibly rewarding to, every time I go to get on the highway to drive to work, I go by the library, and I think that's a thing that I have been able to make better. I've been able to make a contribution. And so I wish that I had found ways, smaller ways, because this is kind of a time-consuming thing, but smaller ways as I was going through my career and as I was learning and developing, because just as I'm taking my skill set to them, I'm learning from them. I'm learning from new and different business situations and perspectives, and that's rewarding to me as well. So that's my big
And a good
recent
message
change.
of giving back is so important. Barrett, how about you?
And so I wear several hats, right? And the first hat is that I'm responsible for underwriting development deals in North America, in our North American division. And I'll assume you guys know what underwriting means, but if you don't, I'll be glad to talk to you afterwards. And that's what I was originally brought in to Starwood to do, right? But then over time, like the sedimentary rock, I just kept accumulating functions and tasks. So in addition to that now, I also do deal policy globally. Deal policy for us, we're a big global company, has to do with how we want to think about deals that have certain characteristics. When we go to franchise a hotel that's a new hotel for us and hasn't been in our system, but maybe it's a 20-year-old building, do we generally want to think about franchising it for 20 years, or do we want to think about franchising for 10 years? Is there some business rule that would work better for us? If we're presented with an opportunity for a deal that has a developer building a new hotel, but he also wants to build residential units right next door, how would we approach that? Would we want our brand name to be used on the residences? Would we want to provide services? Would we want to segregate the two parts of the development from each other? So it's actually really cool stuff, and really kind of, I feel, on the edge of global real estate development, where I get to sit and where I get to work. So it genuinely engages and fascinates me. I also run our Global Development Committee. So we're this big company, and we have brands, right? And we have real estate, and we want to grow footprint, and there are all kinds of people who are involved in all of these functions. We design hotels, and we have a big team of people who design, and then the brand leaders, right, want to distinguish their brands with design. But at the end of the day, when we go to do a deal, there's this whole population of people that have to agree, okay? And it's my job to help build that consensus and get us to the point where we and our senior leadership team, because they're involved in every deal, where we as a company and where our senior leadership team are all aligned and can sign off that we want to do a deal.
You make it sound so easy.
It's a lot of fun, I'll tell you that.
And policy has to change with every property you acquire, right?
Our policy changes over time as we learn things, okay? You would be amazed, right, at how when you open the paper in the morning and there's a headline, oh, let's see, a headline something like, investor suing Donald Trump, okay, over failed condominium hotel in Mexico. Okay, what happens to us? We go into, oh my goodness, what's our policy mode, right? That automatically, right, is going to shape the flavor of my day and is going to influence the kinds of work that I and my team and a whole bunch of other people in our organization get to work on and think about, you know, for the next week, month, 6 months, or a year. So our policy changes, you know, can change at any time, but usually in response to something that's happening in the world or to some experience that we have with one of our hotels.
Ladies, would you be willing to share with us one of the most interesting experiences that you've had and that you've had to face, a difficult experience, and how you handled it and how it turned out in your career? The most difficult thing?
All right, you want me to go?
Sure. I
Yeah,
guess
okay, all right.
I'll go to the other end
Okay,
of the table.
so I have to preface this because I want to preface this by saying, answering this question, okay, that's one of the hardest things.
Yeah.
This is life, guys, okay? This is life as a professional in a career. And in life, you have crises and you have things happen and things get hard. And they get hard all the time, right? The hardest thing I've ever had to do probably hasn't happened yet, okay? But there have been a lot of hard things. So it was very challenging for me. Thank you for the heads up about this question. It was very challenging for me to pick the hardest thing, okay? But I tried to pick something that was hard that I thought would help instruct you, okay? And that I thought would help make a point that I think I want to make because I wish somebody had said it to me. So I'll tell you about the time when I was maybe 3 years out of school, okay? And we were working on a proposed hotel in Times Square, which was going to be, at that time, possibly one of the most expensive hotels ever built in the world. It was going to be 1,000 rooms. And it was being proposed to be built in one of the tawdriest neighborhoods in the world because Times Square was a really scary place at that point in time. And the deal was so big, in fact, that no lender, no bank would take it. They had to get an amalgamation, right? They had to get an amalgamation of banks, each who would take a pick of it. This was a very important development for our client. And this was a very important development for the city. And it was a very important piece of business for my company because we were pretty new at providing services to this client. So I found out on a Tuesday that we'd been invited to come and present. We had analyzed the hotel and made a recommendation and made a projection of income and expense and why we thought all these people were going to come and stay at the hotel, why we thought the hotel would be a success. And I found out on a Tuesday that on Wednesday we had to go and present. And there I was, right, 3 years out of school, and there were 50 lenders. These guys all looked, they were 60. They were all smoking cigars, right? They were dressed in suits with handkerchiefs and ties. I mean, it was really, truly intimidating. And right?
They were all men.
And they were all men. They were all men, okay? And I felt like I was in second grade, you know, going to the principal's office to make a book report on a book that I hadn't read. I felt this was a really I mean, I was there, I had to present. And it was a moment of emotional growth for me and a moment, I think, of coming into adulthood for me. Because I reached down into myself, and I remember standing there. You know, it was some guy's birthday, one of the bankers. They'd made a cake in the shape of Manhattan with all the buildings and stuff.
All the
I
buildings
remember,
alone, probably.
yeah, exactly. And what I remembered at that moment was that when I was in early high school, I had acted, okay, and I'd been on the stage and I'd been in a couple of school plays, and I said to myself, my gosh, Karen, you better act like a consultant right now. And that's where I went to pull it out of myself at that moment. And of course I performed, and it was very rewarding, and everybody liked me, and they built the hotel, and it was a smashing success. I think the thing that I want to share and that I want to tell you is that you all have it too, okay? And that the seeds of success, you can plan, you can join great companies, they all help, okay? But the seeds of your success are in you. And there is probably no experience that you've ever had in your life that you can't reach down and use at some important moment, or maybe some less important moment in your career. All of your experience, right, is accessible to you. I believe in doing things and mental exercises that increase your fluid intelligence. Fluid intelligence, the concept of fluid intelligence is that we all bring things to the party. What do you have, what can you access at any point in time? And those things that you bring to the party and can access, okay, those skills you have, those experiences you have, are the things that are going to help you succeed in your career. Just like my little 9th grade play helped me get through a really important business presentation.
Excellent advice. That's excellent. Great story. And you've never forgotten that either, right? It's
Never
one of those
forgotten it. Oh my
experiences
goodness.
You never forget. Great. Anne, do you have something to share?
Yeah, I think the hardest things are life balance. Everybody says that, but you know what? They say it because it's true. I mean, I'm married. I have 2 kids. I'm a consultant. I'm a managing director. I do a lot of expert witness work. At any given moment, I have to figure out who I'm supposed to be at that moment, and that can be really, really hard. And it's hard not when your daughter calls you hysterical in the bathroom because she has a chemistry test and she cannot remember one thing of chemistry. That's easy because that's when you get in the car and go. What's hard are the nuances. Like, at what point do you need to be this person or that person, and what kind of role model do I need to be for her so that she understands what it is to be not just a mom. And there's nothing wrong with being just a mom, but that's not who I am. And so she needs to understand the different facets. And the thing that has helped me manage this aspect of my life requires me to tell a story that sometimes makes me cry, so I will apologize in advance. But
Want a Kleenex?
you'll know.
Okay.
Believe me, you'll know. So in the spring of 1999, I was 8 months pregnant with our second child, and both of my parents were dying of cancer. And I had a almost 4-year-old, and life sucked. I probably shouldn't use that word, but I don't know what other word actually would be a worse word probably to describe what life was like. And then my husband lost his job. And I was a basket case because I just didn't know what I was supposed to do first. And I had this really, really difficult client who had needed an impact study. And impact studies in those days, and actually it's still this way, you know, you find out they're going to build, in this case, I don't even remember what it was, like a Holiday Inn in the backyard of your Holiday Inn, and you're all up in arms, and it's going to be the end of your business, and there's a procedure. You have to object, and then you have 10 days to produce a study from a consultant that proves your point. Otherwise, you know, welcome the new Holiday Inn in your backyard. And so he needed what he needed when he needed it. And I knew that because I'd done other impact studies, and I know that those are the rules. But I also knew, as I was sitting at my desk, that there was nothing I could actually do to help him. Even if I didn't feel like I needed to be other places, my head was so elsewhere that there was nothing I could really do that would help him. And so I said that. I said, I can't help you, and let me tell you why. And I learned in that moment that for all of the professional people that you meet and in situations that you end up in, they're all people too. And they've all had parents or pregnant wives or crises or this, that, or the other thing that have affected them. And if you deal with your colleagues, your clients, your coworkers, and let them see the person that you are and let them see all the people that you have to be, then they will understand you better. They will help you when you need help. They will rely on you when they need help. And it will be a much richer relationship between all of the pieces. That guy, that difficult client, ended up sending a check, a personal check. They sent one from the company, but he sent a personal check to the American Cancer Society in memory of my parents because I had shared that with him. And that was
Never
just
forget,
amazing.
right.
You just don't forget that. And those people are still a client and still among my most treasured professional friends, of which there are a lot. But so that's be a person, be accessible, be who you need to be when you need to be that, and try to get some sleep.
That's a good one. Questions over there. Brooke, you have something you want to share?
I think one of the biggest challenges always for me is, and I don't do it that often, is letting people go. And unfortunately, you have to do that sometimes when you run a company. And I remember back in 2009 when the economy was really in the dumpers. And a lot of companies, including ours, had to do some major downsizing. And for our size company, we had to let a good amount of people go. People that had worked really hard and didn't, they were being let go just because we couldn't afford to keep them on, not because they had done anything wrong. And here we have these people that we are their livelihood. And some of these people had even worked for us for a good 10, 15 years. And to me, that was one of the most difficult things that we had to do. And I think what made it a little more handleable was the fact that we planned it out. We really spent a lot of time talking to each of the individuals. We've got some outside counseling afterwards. And we even spent time in talking to the people who were remaining in our company. Because when you have downsizing, you have this fear ripple effect that goes out throughout the company about, am I next going to be let go? So you'll all probably have to do this one day, and the only thing that I will advise you is that do it with as much compassion as you can, because it's never easy.
It has to be.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Tough, very tough. Very tough. Glyn?
My life is filled with deal making, as you probably figured out. In deal making, it's very tricky to figure out who to trust and who not to trust, and when you have a handshake agreement and when you don't. And I learned that lesson in a very hard way because I was working on a transaction, buying a hotel that a family, two brothers, had spent probably 4 to 5 years in California, getting zoning, getting permitting. I mean, it was their passion. They had this project that was zoned and permitted. They'd put all their life savings into it. And we were coming in to acquire the project and build it and own it. And I had worked with a gentleman from a capital company. He had his own capital company. And he had assured me, committed, handshake agreement, that he was there with us. He was going to be buying it. And so, spent an inordinate amount of time and energy negotiating this transaction. And also knew at the time that it was really critical that this family was giving up other options to do this transaction with us, and that if the thing failed, that this could easily put this family into bankruptcy, personal bankruptcy. So I really tried to make sure that I had the right capital partner that would come to the table. And we came close to the closing, and I reached out to the capital partner to get sort of final commitment and get paperwork done, et cetera, and legal agreements. And phone calls didn't get returned. And I emailed, no response. I called the office, no response. And this went on for 10 days. Couldn't get the CEO to the table. And we had to walk at the last minute from this transaction, and I knew the consequences with this family because they were running out of money and they were planning to close and move on, and they were selling this project because they had to sell the project. Anyway, that was a tough experience because I thought I sort of nurtured the skills of who to trust and who not to trust, but the lesson learned is really be wary of who you trust, unfortunately. And secondly, get everything in writing if you can. Handshake agreements work once in a while, but when they don't, you pay the price, and it's not worth it. So I just think it's better to be safe than sorry. And so those are two lessons that I learned through a very tough business situation.
Let's give her a hand. Difficult. Okay, let me share this with you. Women in the boardroom are not as well represented as men, right? And there's often a disparity in salaries. Why do you think that men still outnumber women in many of the top positions? Who wants to jump into that question?
I'll try.
Good, go for it, Brooke.
I wish we knew the answer, and I am very hopeful we are making a lot of progress. I do think it has a lot to do with women being the primary caregiver, and in a lot of cases, the primary breadwinner. And I think that when women have to juggle those kind of lifestyles, it's very hard for them to think about taking on more stress and being at the top of the totem pole, because there's a lot of other jobs. I mean, I think we all view it, getting to the top, that is the most important, and I don't know what other people's viewpoints on it, but I think there's many women who pursue careers that the money is good, the satisfaction is good, and it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be the top honcho to do it, especially if you're going to be juggling your family and your career. So,
I totally agree. I think that a lot of it stems from different definitions of success. And the traditional male definition of success is that you are the best. You're number one. You're the top of the heap, right? I don't know if it's fair for me to say that all women don't have that same definition, but I think a lot of women don't have that same definition. I don't remember ever sitting down and saying, I want to be the head honcho of HVS or of wherever. I just wanted to succeed at what it was I had set out to do. And as I've moved through my life, there have been different areas at which I want to succeed. And work is certainly one of them, but motherhood is one of them. Wifery, if that's what it's called, is one of them. That sounds weird, right? And I actually have a husband who stays home. He's home with our kids. He's the one that does the carpool. He's finally gotten to the point where he actually makes dinner, so I don't have to come home at night and make dinner. That's really good.
That is
actually,
good.
It's usually good, I think is what I would have to say. It's
The
not
idea is
really
good.
It's usually good, yeah. And let me tell you, we could have a whole symposium about that, because there's just so many layers to that reversal, especially for people of our generation. Right. I mean, that wasn't what he thought was going to happen when he grew up. It's not what I thought was going to happen when I grew up. It evolved. He's a volunteer firefighter too, so when he can go do that and feel, I don't know, macho and sort of offset the housewifey thing, maybe, I don't know. But even with that I don't feel that that's freed me to go to take my position to the next level, because that's not what's important to me. What's important to me is to succeed. So I think women are making some choices to not be that person. I also think we all owe Katie Taylor a huge debt of gratitude for carrying the burden for all of us, on that level in so many ways.
Do you want to contribute?
Yeah, I think I have a little bit more of a controversial perspective on this, and I think it's on the one hand, I think when I was started out in the career in hotels, I think, the hospitality business was definitely an old boys network. There's no question about that. I felt it. It was the case. It was, but the issue is how you deal with it. And one thing I did learn, and I've learned throughout my career, is you can't change people's approaches and attitudes. You can't it's a societal thing. These things take generations. So I have to say, since I started to now, there's been a huge shift, a huge change. I'm on one public board and one private board. I had no issues getting on those boards. When you're good and you excel in what you do, you're recognized, and you have to sort of keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And at the same time, I think one really important issue, as you sort of climb in terms of being successful is to really pick your boss, or pick who you work for. Because yes, I think you're right, women do make choices, but I have worked for crazy people. And I have worked for phenomenal people. When I had my children, I actually spent more time analyzing who I was going to work for and making choices about who I was going to work for than the job itself. Because I knew I would need to have some time, I'd need to have some flexibility. And at the end of the day, if you don't have a supportive boss, you can't do that. And I think, but I do think there's a generational change going on. I think it's never perfect, but you just have to keep proving yourself. You have to embrace being a woman. I think you have to, continue to work hard, and you will be recognized. But you have to be very determined and put your hand up and ask for things and not hide behind curtains. And so I think I just think that it's easy to criticize society and what isn't, but you have to make what is, and you have to push extra hard to be recognized and to perform and prove yourself.
Wonderful words of advice. They're fabulous. I like them. Okay. I see that the microphones are here, which means it's time for the students to have the opportunity to ask any questions you'd like. We have about 10, 15 minutes. Will you please come to the microphone, those that have some questions you wish to ask? If not, I have a whole bunch more I could ask, but please come to the microphone. Hi.
Okay, cool. Hi, my name is Jesse. I'm a senior in the Hospitality and Tourism program, and I thought the topic of this lecture was really great. I wanted to step beyond just barriers for women in the hospitality industry, but I wanted to ask all of you, what are your companies doing to create a more comfortable and equal work environment, not just for women, but for LGBT employees as well? I know that Starwood scored 100 on the Human Rights Campaign's Corporate Equality Index. And how do you feel that providing that kind of open environment, work environment, affects your brand image in terms of attracting talent or just getting people to come to you?
Thank you very much for mentioning our recognition, by the way. Thank
You're very
you.
welcome.
Thanks for asking the question. Companies like us, okay, we're a global company, right? We have over 1,000 hotels. We're in close to 100 countries. We have over 42 languages spoken by our various associates and close to 150,000 more associates. It is so clearly, okay, in our best interest to make a workforce that reflects the diversity of our customer base, that it's kind of almost goes without saying, except I suppose one can't say it enough. So we have a number of initiatives, and it's kind of baked into our system, right, to provide mentoring, to provide focus on talent development and stuff. I would like to make the point, however, that we do believe, we do want to invite career growth and encourage career growth for our talented associates of all genders, both genders, genders, races, religions, creeds, nationalities, sexual orientations, languages spoken, etc. So career growth, very important to us. We have many examples within our organization of folks who've worked their way up the ranks, and we hope to continue that tradition.
Anybody else
Thank you.
want to answer the question?
We're a little bitty company compared to Starwood, so we don't have those resources.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm a little short for this mic. Hi, my name's Leslie Black, and I'm a junior in the program. I was wondering if you could think of an instance where being a woman gave you a special perspective that maybe the men didn't have on something in the business or the industry.
One that immediately comes to mind is when I was sitting at the table there with my brother and another male consultant, and we were brainstorming about creating an advisory board for our company. And after about an hour of throwing out names, I finally had to say, I've not heard one woman mentioned yet in any of these names. So the awareness of just being a female, I think, is what comes to mind.
You don't think about it until the situation arises. It's like, hey, I'm the only one here.
An example I can think of is, as I said before, I do a lot of expert witness work, and it's not just the hospitality industry that has a lot more men than women. Certainly the legal field does, and I have found being a woman a distinct advantage. Not that I'm smarter or wearing different clothes or whatever, but when I take the stand to give my opinion, it's a completely different voice. And men are very focused on being serious, and they wear a dark suit and a tie, and they speak in tones that make it clear that they're very authoritative and they know what they're talking about. And when I testify, I rarely look like this because I don't need to look like this. Actually, I was thinking about how we're all wearing our right? But anyway, I don't look like this. And when I talk, and as an expert, I don't try to be serious. I try to just share what it is that I think, what I've learned, why I've learned it, and you see people actually wake up. And I don't think it's that I'm more interesting than the other guy. I think it's that I have a different inflection, a different tone, and I've had a couple lawyers validate this impression. So I think it's just being different can be a real advantage when you're in a room full of serious people.
Can I also add you're genuine? I think that's the word, genuine and authentic.
Which is not unique to women, but it's
No, but
an important characteristic.
Yeah.
But it helps.
Well, yeah, I have to tell you, okay, it's very funny for me saying that because Bjorn is right there looking at me, and we have gone up against each other as expert witnesses. So I'm sitting here saying this thinking, I hope he'll still be talking to me afterwards. But I guess you're out of that business now, or okay, so we'll be, are we okay?
Okay, we're still friends, right? Karen, did you have anything you wanted to add to that at all?
I think I have too many examples to tell you about. I'll catch you afterwards.
Sounds
Okay.
good. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay, let's thank our panel for wonderful. Thank you all. As you well know, we have a reception that we want you to come and attend right away, but the ladies will be here to answer your questions. So, and you can tell they're very accessible. So please come up if you want to talk to them in private. Again, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.